Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Sam Peterson on the line. He is a founder and CEO over at Mind Spa Denver. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Adam. It's an honor to be here.
All right, Sam, so we got a lot to talk about today. So, of course, I want to get into Mind Spa Denver. I want to talk about the mental health practice, of course. I get into your background. And I think just to get us started here, I like to start with what we like to call our Mission Matters Minute. So our aim and our goal, Sam, and our mission is to amplify stories for entrepreneurs and executives and experts. So that's what we do. Sam, what mission matters to you?
So the mission that matters to me, Adam, is changing the way that mental health is treated in this country for our veterans and first responders.
Well, how did that mission start for you?
It started as a patient, man. Back when I was in the military, I was an explosive ordnance disposal technician. So I was the guy in the big green suit that went down and cut wires on improvised explosive devices and helped catch bomb makers in Afghanistan. You know, I loved my job. It was by far one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my life. I got to meet some of the most amazing people, but what they didn't tell me in the recruiter's office was how high the suicide rate is.
Wow.
And I don't know if you know this, but vets are 1.5 times more likely to die by suicide than non-veterans. And people with a traumatic brain injury have a 3 times greater chance to die by suicide than the rest of the population. And being a bomb tech checks both of those boxes. And so, it didn't take too long being into the field before we started losing guys, just dropping like flies, honestly. And nobody knew why. Everyone wanted to chalk it up to post-traumatic stress. But I have to be honest, we're a very resilient bunch. There's such a significant selection process for our job that, PTSD just as an all-encompassing diagnosis for the whole field just didn't seem right to me. And then we started to realize very quickly that a ton of us were just getting constantly bombarded with blast waves. And the more I dug into that as a root cause for all these issues, the more it just showed it kind of TBI reared its ugly head, and it got to the point where I've been suffering from these things myself. I was suicidal at one point. The only reason I'm still alive today is because one of my friends texted me when I was about to pull the trigger when I had my 45 in my mouth, and that's the only reason I'm alive.
Whoa.
And he invited me over to his place and introduced me to some of these alternative modalities that now we've incorporated into this one-stop shop for mental health, and it completely saved my life and got me on the right trajectory. And then, 5 months after that, I was finally doing good, finally in a really good, stable place, looking towards the future. And I was in the motor pool talking to one of my mentors right before a field problem, right before Memorial Day. And I'll never forget that conversation with Neil because it was the last one he'd ever had with anybody at the unit. Because on Memorial Day, he walked out into his backyard and shot himself in the head with his 3-year-old son in the house. And at that point, it just floored me to see someone who was just a shining example of everything that someone in our field could be, to take their own life like that. And it just hit me square, just right between the eyes, man. And I was like, man, wow. It's not just me. Not only am I not alone, but everyone, this could literally happen to anyone. This could happen to anyone in our field, and nobody's touching it. Nobody's really getting to the root cause of this. So I dedicated my professional life outside of the military to figuring out why, not only why is this happening, but what we can do to interdict deaths related to suicide from anxiety, depression, PTSD, and brain injuries. And that's how I got here.
And I want to stick on the why just a little bit longer before we go into the modalities. I just want to clarify something. You mentioned, at least for your experience, I think you said blast waves. Like, what does that mean? I don't want to just assume everybody listening understands that, or kind of like the complexity of what you're saying.
Yeah, so in the military, we're around explosions a lot, whether it's firing different kinds of weapon systems, like if you've ever seen shoulder-fired rocket launchers, or shooting large artillery pieces, or being inside of a tank, or explosively breaching a door, or in our case, dealing with improvised explosive devices that terrorists had made and were trying to target our forces with. Like dealing with those all the time, doing large demolition shots. And I'm talking about, I know it's going to be hard for people to conceptualize this, but thousands of pounds of explosives going off at once. Like, you want to talk about mushroom cloud. It was like, it's like,
it's not like you have your 4th of July fireworks where you're just like, oh, you know what I mean? That's pretty loud. It's not like a cherry bomb, right?
Oh, no. No, this is enough to vaporize you.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So when there is an explosive event, it creates a blast wave. Just imagine like you dropped a rock in a completely still pond. And those ripples that come out from where you dropped that rock into that pond are the blast wave. And that blast wave interacts with our tissues. It literally, it tears as it goes through. It shreds brain tissue. The closer you are, the worse this effect gets. And over time, those micro tears build up damage to your brain cells that causes inflammation, and it also causes your brain's immune system to become overactive. And that overactive immune system kills you it takes about 20 years to do so. And so until you use therapies that interdict that process, halt that process or reverse it, you're looking at a situation where people don't get better, they only get worse. And that's
it just
what the medical
to deteriorate.
Exactly. And that's what the medical establishment has told us is our fate. And it's not. None of that is true. And it's really because the medical establishment as it stands right now is really focused on I'm talking about this as far as mental health goes. When we're talking about the brain, we're talking about behavioral health. There are two major tools that the traditional establishment uses, and that's medication and talk therapy. And neither of those treatments get to the underlying cause of these behavioral health issues and traumatic brain injury. They really can't. And that's because the two things that anxiety, PTSD, depression, and brain injuries have in common is, first of all, they're highly inflammatory to the brain. So they cause a lot of inflammation in the brain, and they affect your neural connectivity. So they affect your brain's ability to talk to itself and intercommunicate.
So this gets us to some of the why and the beginning and the root cause. Now you went on this journey, after if I'm off on the timeline, please correct me. But after that unfortunate story of your friend, you go on this journey to then figure out are there other solutions, or do I just have to accept my fate? Because you're kind of, if I'm piecing this together right, you're also not only possibly going to be a victim, except you received that text from your friend, but it still could be lingering for you as time goes on. And if you didn't correct and or fix some of this stuff, then and figure out, is there another answer other than what I'm being told in general? So now, correct, if I'm off on any of that, by the way, please correct me. But now my understanding of the timeline is that now you're on this journey to figure out, what can I do? Let's pick up from there, and of course, correct me if I'm off on any of that timeline.
No, you're totally right. After that happened, I went on just a journey to find other treatment modalities, like ketamine. Went and did a couple of ketamine infusions. Noticed that everything got better for a pretty significant amount of time, but then my symptoms slowly started to come back. I then did hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and that was one of the things that really had the longest lasting effects. And from there, started a nonprofit to pay for veterans to get more effective mental health care. So we were paying for, and then proving that they were in fact getting better. So we started this nonprofit called the Invictus Project. We started paying for vets to go through hyperbaric and ketamine. And we're like, we're almost there. They're getting so much better, but it's we're not seeing these sustained results that we really want to see. From there, I met a doctor in Aspen who was doing intranasal stem cells. and helped develop his protocol. We actually did it on both myself and my dad. And my dad had a 30-year-old traumatic brain injury. And it's kind of, serendipitous that I got into this because he called me while this is all going on. He's like, hey, son, can you help me? I think I'm starting to get dementia. Granted, this guy's 55 at the time.
Wow.
And, he 30 years ago fell off a 3-story roof, hit a slab of concrete. The only reason he's alive is because the wooden step that his head hit shattered the thing into a million pieces.
Oh.
So he's starting to get dementia at the age of 55, calls me up. I mean, my dad's on Medicaid, so yeah. I'm developing like these new stem cell protocols. I was like, Dad, I don't know what to do. Like, I can't afford to pay for this for you. I turned to Dr. Hughes, the doctor who originally developed the stem cell protocol, and I was like, hey man, like, is there anything we can do? And Dr. Hughes looked at me and is like, oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll just upregulate your stem cells and put them into his brain. And I was like, what? So, yeah, I know, right? For anybody who's listening who, has kids, guess what? They actually do have medical utility for you. So they're not just there to drain your wallets and age you. You can actually
little farms.
Well, they're little stem cell farms for you. I can tell you this. I call them little stem cell factories.
Oh, that's greatness.
Yeah, so, dude, what we did is we upregulated my body's stem cell production using hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We took the stem cells out of my body. We stuck them into his brain and his spine. And this man was the emotional equivalent of a 15-year-old for my entire life. And since that treatment, that was back in 2018, new dude. New guy. It was like the emotional intelligence fairy decided to hit him on the head the right way this time. And all the symptoms have been gone since then.
Wow.
And this is the tip of the iceberg for this kind of technology. And that's why these new innovative treatments are so important, because this just line of crap that we've been fed regarding mental health that like, hey, you're going to have this for the rest of your life is just wrong. It's absolutely wrong. These things can be treated and we can recover, move on, and gain strength from these traumas instead of being bound by them.
Let's spend some of the time we have left and just tell us a little bit more specifically about Mind Spa Denver and how people can get involved.
Yeah, so here at Mind Spa Denver, we use a combination, and I'm going to throw a couple medical terms at you here. So
I'm going to catch them, go for it.
I'll catch them, go. All right, so we use a combination of culturally competent talk therapy, medication management, ketamine infusion therapy, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of medical terms, and it is, but like the basic principle here is that we are downregulating inflammation in the brain. We are upregulating what's called neuroplasticity. So we're making it so your neurons can branch out and create new connections. And then we're giving your brain all of the energy it needs to do that healing and rewiring. And when we do that simultaneously, we see some pretty amazing effects. We treat a lot of veterans at our clinic, a lot of first responders. And what we see is if someone engages with all of these therapies simultaneously, the average time for them to reach full symptom remission from depression, anxiety, PTSD, and TBI symptoms is around 14 to 17 days.
Wow. Nate, how do people follow up? How do they learn more? How do they connect with your team?
Yeah, so, the easiest way is to check us out at mindspadenver.com. We've got all the services there, a lot more in-depth dive on what we do. They can reach out to us at our clinic's email, info@mindspadenver.com, or just give us a call at 303-327-0350.
Perfect. And for everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put the links in the show notes so that you can just click on the links and head right on over. And speaking to the audience, if you haven't done it yet, especially if this is your first time, hit the subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day, we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So definitely hit that subscribe or follow button. And Nate, man, I appreciate all you're doing out there. And thanks again for coming on the show.
Well, thanks, man. Appreciate you having me.